And a lot of people face these bills with COVID looming. A night at the hospital could have been $2,000 to $10,000 just for minor things when you're only getting like maybe some Tylenol from it. So it definitely hit home for a lot of people who are already living check to check. So how does the Inflation Reduction Act that was just passed help with these medical expenses as well?
So what the Inflation Reduction Act does, it has a number of provisions in there, but some of the more important provisions relate to allowing Medicare to negotiate with drug companies related to the cost of drugs, which everyone already knows the cost of drugs have really gotten out of control. So that's a positive. In addition, drug companies would not be able to raise the cost of drugs above the inflation rate. So again, that's another thing that helps cap the cost of all these drugs, which, as we know, are significant for so many people.
Now we got to talk about this next nonprofit. I love its name. It's called RIP Medical Debt, and they've actually paid off over $6.7 billion in delinquent hospital bills for consumers. So how does a company like this work exactly? How can people find out about it? And are there other organizations or programs that do a similar relief type of help?
So what they do, first of all, it's a nonprofit organization, which it's national across the United States. And what they basically do is they buy up medical debt at steep discounts, right? So they're approaching these hospitals that have these uncollectible debts, or debts in which they're trying to collect, and these types of organizations like RIP, they buy them up, and then what they do is they're receiving donations from people, again, because they're a charitable organization. They are taking that money and basically wiping out people's hospital bills and those medical debts. So this is enormously helpful for people, and it's a great concept because what happens is the hospitals are getting some money for which perhaps they would get nothing. So they're getting something out of it, and of course ultimately the people with medical debt are having that wiped out completely. So it is a way to address a very significant problem in the United States.
That's huge. So if someone is unfortunately unable to get a hold of RIP medical debt, what are some other ways that people saddled with all these medical bills can try to help their credit report fix it or save it from being horribly tarnished?
Believe it or not, the single biggest issue is errors on medical bills. You know, you get a medical bill and you automatically assume that it's correct. It should actually be the opposite. You should assume that there's errors on your medical billing and that you need to go through it line by line in order to find them. And these errors many times are not small. They're thousands and thousands of dollars. So it really is a matter of the burden is on you to make sure, first of all, that you're being billed exactly for the services that you received at the appropriate pricing. Now, on top of that, by the way, you may not think that your medical bills are negotiable. Well, actually, they are. So even when you get to the point when your medical bill is accurate, and again, that's step one, there's nothing that stops you from contacting the medical provider, whether it's a doctor or it's a hospital, and saying, wait a minute, I can't pay this. How about we negotiate an amount for me to be able to pay off? That's critical. And the same thing applies to your credit report. Do not assume that things on your credit report are actually accurate. There are errors, and there's plenty of them that get reported. Those errors lower your score, which are potentially devastating. So go through your credit report from all three of the major providers, Experian, TransUnion, Equifax. Look at them very closely and look for mistakes. Then, of course, you contact them and you address those mistakes. That's the way to approach these things.
Okay, so when you're making these approaches and you find out some of this stuff is real and you do have things on your credit report, when is consolidating your medical debt a good idea?
Well, once you get to the point where you have determined that you have gotten your medical debt as low as it possibly can be, it's accurate and it's low, then of course the approach is like any time that you do have a debt, you figure out how to get on a payment plan so that you can get that number down. It's no different than any other debt that you may incur. It just happens to be for medical expenses. So don't be afraid to get on a payment plan and work it down over time. There's nothing wrong with that.
All right, all great advice. Hopefully those people can use the services as soon as possible. Thanks, Dan Geltrude from Geltrude & Co. And